Hannah Arendt said in The Origins of Totalitarianism, "The true goal of totalitarian propaganda is not persuasion, but organization of the polity. What convinces masses are not facts, and not even invented facts, but only the consistency of the system of which they are presumably part." The song Lily Marlene was used as a piece of that system, not to persuade listeners to accept any specific meaning or belief, but to unify a people in a time when it would seem like all solace had been lost, to provide even the briefest moments of respite from the war raging ahead. In her work, Arendt explores the institutions and operations of totalitarian movements, pausing to focus on the role of propaganda in the political plane. She discusses the evolution of classes into masses and the role of propaganda in dealing with the non-totalitarian world. Arendt addresses the moral flaw in using songs like Lily Marlene as propaganda, saying, before mass leaders seize the power to fit reality to their lies, their propaganda is marked by its extreme contempt for facts as such. With this in mind, listeners can deduce that Lily Marlene was a part of the whole framework of ideological propaganda that was used during World War II. The story of Lily Marlene is a modern fairy story, really, only it's a true story as well. When the fighting men came home from war, they brought with them trophies, souvenirs of the Second World War. But there is one trophy that can be found only in the homes of the 8th Army, a song, Lily Marlene. This particular trophy was captured in the Libyan desert in 1942, but the story of Lily Marlene takes us back to 1923, when the men of the 8th Army were merely children. 1923 was a strange year. Inflation and depression had reduced the people to the point where country and even living held little meaning. Out of this chaos, Hitler made his first attempt to gain power. At this time, Hamburg remained a democratic stronghold against Hitler and fascist ideals. And it was in Hamburg, the largest port in the world, that Lily Marlene was born. In 1915, a 22-year-old soldier fighting in the First World War by the name of Hans Liep wrote a poem. This poem expressed anguish over the separation from his sweetheart, a grocer's daughter named Lily. Joining Lily in his poem, this young soldier remembered the wave from a friendly nurse each night as he sat on sentry duty. Her name was Marlene. This story was titled The Song of a Young Sentry. Years later, Hans Liep released his collection of poems, including his poem addressing his two women, Lily and Marlene. The music of Lily Marlene was written in 1938. It was at this time when a man by the name of Norbert Schultz took notice of Liep's poems. Schultz was a successful German composer of songs, opera, and film music, and although he barely remembered the Great War, when he read Liep's poems, he was captivated by their ominous moods and sat down to write a melody for the young sentry poem. The first person to sing the song was a girl by the name of Lally Anderson, working in a nightclub in Berlin. At that time, no one paid any attention to Lally Anderson or the song. It was the first year of the war, and soldiers were given purely traditional military music. In the autumn of 1940, after the fall of France, the Germans formed their famous Afrika Korps, and they descended into battle with their own special song, Panzer Wollen. It was then that a state of war was pronounced upon the usurpers of Belgrade. In the bombing, the Luftwaffe had tried to leave the radio station relatively untouched. Among the first troops to arrive there was a so-called propaganda company, consisting of war correspondents, newsreel cameramen, and particularly radio engineers. Their orders were to proceed to the radio station, wipe out any Patriot resistance, make contact with a fifth column inside the station, and begin broadcasting at once. But first, they had to be sure who was in charge of the station, Patriots or the fifth column. The propaganda company had Tommy guns attached to it, as well as radio apparatus. The men inside the station did in fact turn out to be fifth column, but even with their help, it was a rush to get going. Among the luggage of the propaganda company, there was a suitcase of gramophone records to broadcast in the space between communicates and propaganda talks. The Nazi plan was to use the station in order to broadcast to all of the German troops abroad. To end their first broadcast, the station played one last song, Lily Marlene. From the first moment the soldiers heard Lily Marlene, it was a smash hit. But that can't be said for every German official. In its infancy, Nazi politics nearly sent the song into oblivion. Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's propaganda chief, was reported as hating the song for not being military enough. He wanted it to change into a stirring march. To loyal Nazis, the song seemed to be anti-war, even close to treason, and the singer, Lally Anderson, was believed to be sympathetic towards Jews. The song was banned, and both Anderson and Schultz were charged with moral sabotage of the nation's aims. She was placed virtually under house arrest, and he was ordered to compose music only praising Nazi ideals. It was only after the field marshal asked Radio Belgrade to play the song every night, causing a surge in its popularity, that Goebbels had to retract the ban and pretend that the Nazis welcomed the song. In truth, the song's popularity grew so fast the Germans built a program around it, a Letters from Home program. This was just the moment for it,